And welcome back. Between record droughts in the West and record heat in places like England, you may be thinking a lot about the climate lately. But for many environmentalists who are always thinking of Mother Nature, there has been a sense of frustration.
They blame a lack of urgency on Congress and the White House for failing to pass new policies over the past year and a half. But that could change soon as the Senate prepares to vote on the largest climate change bill in American history. Joe St. George reports.
For most of this year,
that's the issue that I have with Congress currently. They just don't care enough.
If you spoke with an environmentalist about politics,
I think more people are getting bummed. I am.
You likely found frustration.
People are dying because of the heat.
We found that quickly at Goodland, a pro-environment shop in Columbus, Ohio recently, where the pictures on the wall are just as progressive.
I grow lavender and basil at my home.
As the soap's Mike Minix, an environmental entrepreneur, makes.
I want to leave the world better for my son.
The anger felt here is felt by many climate activists across the U.S.
Hello, everyone.
Despite President Joe Biden and Democrats controlling the House and the Senate for the last year and a half, no major climate change legislation has passed. That disappointment on display at last week's congressional baseball game, where activists attempted to stop the game to send a message.
We want action.
Well, for the first time in months, there is optimism.
I feel more hopeful than I have in a really long time.
Flora Cardoni is the field director at Penn Environment, an advocacy group. She says the Inflation Reduction Act, which is expected to be voted on in Congress soon, will deliver badly needed policy.
This is the most significant climate bill we've ever seen at the national level.
One of the biggest changes, $370 billion worth of tax credits to incentivize projects like wind and solar in the U.S. That's meant to encourage businesses to change their ways.
I mean, let's be real, a lot of business owners are focused on money, and this provides a lot of incentives for businesses to convert to clean energy.
Exactly, yeah, businesses should be able to put solar on their roofs much more easily.
The legislation also provides a $7,500 rebate to Americans who buy a new electric vehicle. A $4,500 rebate would be available if you buy a used electric car.
This kind of incentive can really help folks make that choice.
Of course, there are things in the legislation that environmentalists aren't exactly thrilled with. The bill guarantees the U.S. must lease millions of acres of public land and offshore waters for oil and gas development before they can be used for renewable energy, a victory for oil and gas. The legislation is not expected to receive any Republican support because separate provisions raise taxes.
And I'm really proud of the things that we've made here.
Back at Goodland, Mike's message ahead of the vote.
Things take a long time sometimes to get done.
I'm Joe St. George reporting.
And as just mentioned, researchers say we're already seeing increased amounts of intense wildfires across the U.S. One factor that's driving up the severity is human activity and its impact on climate change. UC Berkeley forest ecologist and climate change scientist Patrick Gonzalez says transportation produces more carbon pollution than any other sector in the U.S. and around the world. He says residents can make a difference now by choosing to bike, walk, or consider public transit. This could cut a person's carbon pollution by 99%. Gonzalez also says the way ranchers manage livestock is another big factor when it comes to carbon pollution. Cows, sheep, and goats generate a potent greenhouse gas called methane.
Also, raising the feed to feed them produces a lot of carbon pollution. So global adoption of a plant-rich diet could cut carbon pollution enough to get us halfway to the Paris Agreement goal of limiting heating to 1.5 degrees, which is how we avoid the most dangerous impacts of climate change.